The pre-season series continues with a look at some players you might want to avoid. The first player on the list is N'Golo Kante. The centre midfielder was a huge part of Leicester's success last season, and his performances saw lots of big clubs come in for him this summer. Chelsea was successful, of course, and he is expected to go into their starting 11. However, the issue with Kante is that the contributions he makes to a team aren't really rewarded in FPL. So he's great at making tackles and interceptions, but his role doesn't really involve scoring or assisting many goals. In fairness, he did manage 1 goal and 4 assists last season, so he does have some threat, but at 5 million, you'd probably only consider him as a 5th midfielder for the bench, and even then, Kante's not likely to score much more points than a 4.5 million midfielder, in my opinion. The next player on the list is Eric Dier. The Spurs defensive midfielder was a great option last season, but only because he was out of position, meaning that he was listed as a defender in FPL but was actually playing in midfield. This meant that he was rewarded with 4 points every time Spurs kept a clean sheet. This season, however, Dier has been correctly listed as a midfielder in the game, so he'll now only receive 1 point for each clean sheet his team pick up, as well as being less likely to get bonus points. So don't be fooled by his total points from last season. He'll pick up much less this time around, and like most defensive midfielders, he's probably not going to be an option to consider for FPL. The next player to avoid is Michail Antonio. On the surface, it might seem like Antonio is a decent option, priced at 7 million, and he returned 8 goals and 7 assists last season. However, due to Cresswell's injury, it's highly likely that Sam Byram will move across to left back and Antonio will cover the right back spot, which means he'll essentially be reverse out of position, being listed as a midfielder but playing in defence, and that will obviously hinder his ability to get attacking returns. Last season, Antonio made 7 appearances as a right back, and only 1 of his 8 goals was scored from that position. So he's another player to avoid for now, in my opinion, at least until he's able to move into an attacking position. And to finish off the video, I'm going to take a quick look at some other players you might want to avoid, but just to begin with. These are mostly players that played in the Euros and haven't been involved in pre-season much, if at all, but there are a couple of exceptions. Koscielny is almost certain to miss the start of the season due to his extended rest from the Euros. Southampton defenders Cedric and Jose Font may also be afforded rest after featuring in the Euro 2016 final with Portugal. Ivanovic is currently injured with a dislocated shoulder, and even before his injury, the young right back Aina was putting in some very impressive performances, so he could very well get the nod ahead of Ivanovic even when the Serbian returns from injury. Dimitri Payet could yet return, given how important he is for West Ham, but he hasn't featured in pre-season yet, and obviously had a pretty hectic summer with France at the Euros, so he looks risky. Arsene Wenger has hinted at resting Ozil, again due to his participation in the Euros. Sanchez could be a risk as well, though he has returned to training recently. De Bruyne is yet to feature for City during pre-season after playing for Belgium in the Euros, so there are question marks over him now for the start of the season. Dele Alli and Harry Kane are players that I do expect to start, but the reason they're on the list is because they haven't featured in pre-season yet. They looked burnt out towards the end of last season and still looked quite jaded for England at the Euros, so I think even if they do play, it could take them a while to get going. Another potential issue with Kane is that Dembele is suspended at the start of the season, and for whatever reason, Kane's scoring record when Dembele isn't playing is really poor. So I wouldn't consider those two as important to avoid as the others, but I'd still be wary of them. Olivier Giroud is another player likely to receive an extended rest after the Euros. Marcus Rashford is in there simply due to being a rotation risk. Rashford is currently owned by over 7% of managers, but looks set for a place on the bench, with Ibrahimovic the more likely striker to lead the line for United. So those are some players that I'd encourage you to avoid for now. The likes of Kante and Dier I would permanently avoid due to their defensive positions. But I do want to stress that most, if not all of these players, the likes of Payet, Ozil and Kane, will all be great FPL options once they're back. Maybe even from as early as Game Week 2. So it's just something to be aware of, and something to consider for your initial teams in Game Week 1. If you haven't already, definitely check out the Football Survivor game. It's free to play, there's an FPL Tips League on there, and the winner will receive a Premier League football shirt of their choice. So I'll leave a link in the description for anyone who wants to check that out. Thanks for watching the video as always, like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you for more preseason content next week.